Good morning, everybody. It's great to not see you here. Good morning to you. It is so wonderful to have you here, Nigella Lawson.
Well, it's a great honour to be here. I was excited to be invited. It's to be part of such a fabulous event, so thank you.
Thank you. As I was telling you earlier, I am a very big fan of your books, your writing, your recipes. I've got a couple very tattered and battered books at home that I constantly go to, and so I was excited to have the opportunity to talk with you and to talk to you about feel-good food, because when I think of you, I do feel good. I feel, you make cooking feel good. You make it very accessible but exciting. It's got lots of vibrant, fresh flavors. There's something very comfortable and sophisticated at the same time about your approach to food. So I was curious what feel-good food is for you. What's the difference between feel-good food and comfort food?
Well, in a way, I once wrote in an earlier book, for me, all food is comfort food. But I suppose by feel-good food, it's linked. I suppose I wanted to address the notion of comfort food to some extent, which some of it is and some of it isn't. But from a notion of really, let's look and see what we mean by this. Because I think that for a lot of people, comfort food is automatically associated with food that is maybe quite bland or stodgy and has really just nostalgia appeal, maybe a childhood food. And I understand that, but actually for me, the food that makes me feel good and is comforting in an uplifting way. And I also felt that I'm slightly nervous about the term comfort food. I think it's been overused, and also people then think of this term comfort eating, which, as I say in the book, is a misnomer. It's discomfort eating, and I think that perhaps being part of the process of cooking is you begin some essential feeding that means you don't need to use food as emotional ballast. But I suppose to get back to, this question sort of does branch out into many areas that I think are potent in terms of how we live around food. But at its very heart for me, feel-good food is about concentrating on the sort of food and recipes that make me feel good when I'm in the kitchen cooking, not just when I'm eating them. And that means, not an awful amount of complicated process. Anyone who's ever seen one of my books knows that complicated process is not my style anyway. But nevertheless, it's about really thinking about the sort of food that makes you feel you could decompress at the end of a day, or that you could settle in and inhabit your home when you've got a bit more time. But nothing that is so demanding that you start to feel stressed, I think. So that's what feel-good food is.
Right, and that can be, as you say, a quick and calm, like that decompression can be something that doesn't mean you're coming home and you're in the kitchen for 3 hours putting together an evening meal.
Well, I think so, but I think also fast isn't everything. So why I call that the sort of everyday supper chapter quick and calm is that fast can be very frenetic. And sometimes it's more calming to put a chicken in the oven than it is to do a stir fry, which involves lots of chopping and then intense activity over a pan. I like a stir fry, but I promise you my stove looks completely covered afterwards. So I think for me, the sort of food that makes me feel good at the end of the day has to take into account the amount of washing up it involves, and also how it makes me feel when I'm doing it. So as I say, that it's not just fast. It has to be, in some sense, undemanding, but just demanding enough that you're focused. And that for me is that if I'm stirring something, I find the rhythms of just standing and stirring very, very calming. And I don't even mind, chopping up a carrot, but I might draw the line at, actually, chopping up too many vegetables.
Right. Peeling too many garlic. So it's something you can be absorbed in, but is not.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Adam Gopnik often, talks about this phrase, the Japanese phrase, which is, chop wood, carry water, and it's that aspect of cooking that is, I think, that makes one feel well, relaxed is probably too latent a word, but certainly begin to decompress. And I think the difficulty is a lot of cooking, which is chefy food, I mean, obviously on TV and things like that, makes everyone feel that cooking should be a virtuoso performance. And that isn't my sort of cooking. And I also feel that if the cooking you do is all about thinking about how you're going to be judged or how you can impress people, then I think it's going to be essentially an uncomfortable act.
You talk right in the introduction to the book about the space of the kitchen, which you just were talking about now, as a kind of contemplative space and a safe space. But part of what you did in writing this book, what you said was you wanted to cook yourself strong. So what does that process involve?
I think that it's cooking myself strong is about that. I think that at its most basic level, cooking is about sustaining life. But I think also it has a sort of metaphorical force too. And that's that we read a lot or we hear a lot about, cooking being an act of love, and you cook for people and you give them food. But actually, it's very important to extend that act of kindness and generosity to yourself as well. I don't like it when I hear people say, oh no, I'm not going to cook, it's just me. But I've always cooked for myself, I have to say, always. And I like that. It gives me a freedom and to play, I suppose. And playfulness is a very important part of being strong, I think. That creativeness and playfulness in the kitchen, it inspires one in the whole of life. And I also feel that for me, if I cook, I feel very engaged with life, and that's also important in the world. But so at some stage, it may be, at some stage that the idea of strength comes from ingredients as well, that I feel it's really important to respond to what your body needs to eat. And I think you can only respond to what your body needs to eat if you don't deny yourself certain foodstuffs, because a lot of people who say, I won't eat chocolate or I won't eat cake, that's all they crave, and then that's not terribly healthy. I allow myself to eat those things, so I don't feel I have to, I don't suddenly sort of go crazy in the kitchen and feel I have to eat every chocolate bar in the house. Because, I always have some in my purse, I always have some at home, but sometimes I want my body seemed to say I need a lot of sweet potato, and I obeyed it.
And you made, I can't wait to make this, just to dwell on recipes for a bit, the sweet potato macaroni and cheese.
Yes.
I would never have thought of something like that. It's so good.
It makes me laugh, that recipe, or smile, I should say, because it's quite a good example of my sort of cooking, because I cook the sweet potato, which is cubed in water as normal, and I take it out, but I cook the pasta in the same water, because why do you want to be washing up more than you need? You may as well get any of the flavour you want.
Yeah.
And I think cooking is about balance, and I was going to say about in eating, what makes me feel strong is eating what my body needs, and that has to take in as many different ingredients and foodstuffs as possible. A restrictive diet to me is not a balanced diet or a balanced life.
Yeah.
And so the sweet potato is very sweet, and I don't like unmoderated sweetness. So when I was doing the cheese part, yes, of course cheddar, but I wanted feta, that wonderful salty cheese, so that the sweet potato is balanced. And then sage at the end, which has got a bitterness, although I have to say, when cooking for children who are ideologically opposed to green bits, I might leave the sage out.
It's funny because I think I have feta in my fridge all the time now, in part because of your books. And at the beginning of this book, you say, I am known for certain kinds of foods or ingredients that you use over and over. Rhubarb, for example, which is also in this book, and that it's sort of.
I try to keep the rhubarb down for a minimum.
Right. But it's there, and I really appreciate that there are certain ingredients that you're drawn to and that might make multiple appearances in your books, but it's a way for us, for anyone to say, well, I can like chop up a lemon, a fresh lemon, it become ingredient in a salad. I can also use it to marinate. It's like you're kind of learning about, even if it's one ingredient, the kind of multiplicity of that ingredient.
I think that's true, but I also think that, again, it's about being a home cook, which is that I don't want to go shopping more than I need to. I'm not going to send my readers to the shops unnecessarily. So if I particularly want one ingredient in a recipe, I will always want to provide other recipes that use that, because of course, otherwise you just think, well, now I've got that bottle of Chinese rice wine, what am I going to do with the rest of it? I like that, so I buy something and then I want to use it up, you know, and I like leftovers for the same reason.
Yeah.
But I suppose if you're interested in food and cooking, if you start cooking with one particular ingredient, you then find ways of using it differently, because you think, oh, well, that tastes differently when it's roasted. You know, like sweet potatoes, because of my big thing about sweet potatoes, what I started to do is I roast them ahead of time. I just roast up, you know, a pound or 2 pounds, and then later on in the week, I can either make like mash, or I can use it and make soup, so I'm not having to start from scratch all the time. Mm-hmm. And in the same way as can't stop roasting whole garlic heads at the same time, and I just cut the top off and put them in a kind of loose bit of tin foil but tightly sealed, put them in the oven, and I have that ahead of time too. And I cooked my first Thanksgiving. I had some American friends over for supper last year, and I did do this. I had all these things going on, so I did a dip that was like the caramelized garlic. You don't get that, you know, rasp. And sweet potato and some ginger and lime, some chickpeas. Mm. And I like that. And then, of course, if I have some left over, I can heat it up and have it like instead of mashed potato or soup. So I go on and on and on. And it's about, although I have to say, that garlic, when it's just hot out of the oven on toast, is heaven.
Yeah. You know, cooking to feel strong, you make clear, should not be confused with the folks you call the clean food brigade, who you are not fond of.
Well, no, I'm not. I have nothing against the clean eating brigade. I have everything against the term, because I think clean eating presupposes or implies that other forms of eating are dirty and shameful, and I think there's an awful lot of food shaming, and I think that's pernicious. I also think that no good choices ever come out of negativity. Mm-hmm. So if you make people persecute themselves for how they eat, it seems to be a recipe for disaster. And I also think that if by clean eating, what is meant is no processed foods, yeah, that's great, but actually too often clean eating is all about leaving so many ingredients out, and I think it's about too many restrictions. Mm-hmm. and I think maybe a lot of people have to restrict their diet for health reasons, and friends of mine who do have to do that often get incredibly irritated by those who are doing it for other reasons, saying, well, if I could eat that, if I could eat a pizza, believe me, I'd eat a pizza. I can't understand, that wonderful selection, very sad, because it was posthumously published, The Opposite of Loneliness. Mm-hmm. Marina, if someone can help me with her surname, I'd be grateful. She was a young writer who died young, and they collected her essays, but one of it was she was a celiac, and it was a lot of it. She wrote quite movingly about the difficulties of having celiac disease, and how it wasn't, she didn't like it being a lifestyle choice, but I feel everyone is entitled to take out what they want from their diets, but I don't like it if it's done with smugness. Mm-hmm. So I feel that if any of you want not to eat, gluten or dairy or meat or whatever you don't want to eat, that's fine. But if I want to eat gluten, please let me. Is what I feel. But what I feel basically is that for many people, the clean eating is actually a very healthy choice, and for a lot of people, and I've done some work in this area, it's a way of concealing eating disorders.
Huh.
There are two things going on, because it focuses on what you're not eating, and I feel that my notion of healthy eating is focusing on what I can add that makes me feel good. And if you add things that make you feel good, be it the sweet potato, I mean, everyone always thinks, or I always interrupt myself, sorry, but I don't mind, I'm not apologising to myself. But everyone always associates me with, indulgence, but actually, no, I think I'm not the only person, a nutritionist or a doctor, has ever said I must eat fewer vegetables because I ate so many, my body just couldn't do them. So I love everything, but so I'd much rather think, if I feel slightly run down, I'm much more likely to think, what can I add? What would make me feel really good? I'd like some sweet potato and some chickpeas and some broccoli, and I really feel I want that. I need pomegranate seeds with it, or whatever I might think. I'm not thinking, oh, I feel really run down, I mustn't eat bread, but I think bread is, for me, it's good for me if it's good sourdough, I love it. I mustn't eat this, I mustn't eat that, because that's such an awful way of going into life.
Yeah.
Just what I can't do, what I mustn't do. Whereas if you think, what can I eat to make myself feel better? And one of the things, I get obsessed with vegetables when I'm on book tour, because when you don't have access to a kitchen, you can't just have a big bowl of crunchy broccoli for supper.
Yeah. What do you do on book tour? I mean, how do you, if you're going into a city you haven't been before and you are relying not on your own culinary skills but finding food, where are you drawn? How do you map that?
Unfortunately, and one of the cruel ironies is that because book events tend to be at lunchtime and at supper time, I don't get enough to eat. You can see that it's not doing me a lot of harm. But why I have to be careful then that I don't eat too unhealthily.
Yeah.
Because you have to eat what's available. I always carry oat cakes. I don't know if you have oat cakes here. Do you? Yes. Yeah. Those biscuits. I have those in my purse. I have dark chocolate. I have almonds. I've just seen that I've got almonds. They're broken free from their container and they're everywhere. I try to have a banana on me.
Yeah.
But the older I get, the more irritatingly picky I get. I think I've had more dinners than I'm going to have, so I don't want to waste my eating on something that isn't giving me pleasure. And sometimes that's not good, because sometimes it means I get hungry, and believe me, you don't want to know me when I'm hungry.
Do you like eating out? I mean,
I like eating out more when I'm not at home. I don't eat out an awful lot when I'm in London.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously I have to eat out when I'm on tour. I like restaurants that feel sort of cozy. I don't like ones which are fashionable. If someone gives me a foam, I just I don't like that at all. I also don't want to feel that odd sense of both hungry and too full up you get from those too many ingredients on the plate but not enough of only one thing.
Yeah.
I eat quite simply. I eat simply, but well, if I can. I ate well last night, which is good, and I feel I have to do what my body needs. I spent so long ordering last night. I said, I'm sorry, but I've just got this Stanislavski ordering technique.
Breakfast is served.
So when I go to a restaurant, when I go through the menu, I have to put myself in the position of how do I feel if I'm eating that? It's like, the method actor.
Yeah.
I have to go. I'm taking a really long time because I think
it's true. Right?
I think so many people, women particularly, think, what should I be eating, not what do I want to eat. And in my experience, if you eat what you should be eating, you eat what you want to eat as well. So I feel like, what do I feel like? I try and go for that. And if I'm somewhere where there's nothing that I feel like, I panic a bit. And it's awful thing to say, but I do. But to go back to this notion of as well, what do I feel like in balance eating something? I find, I've written about this in this sort of sweet chapter, which is that a lot of my friends say, I don't want to eat dessert, and I don't mind. You know, it's completely okay. I never want to force food on people at all. But I've noticed that what happens is those of us who want a slice of pie have a slice of pie. We then get up and we're talking, we get on with things, and then, or the people who've said no, nothing for me, they're leaning forward with a fork, not with their own plate, and they're taking it, and they always end up eating more. And I'm not saying even to be funny, it's just something I have noticed over time. So in that way, I don't think it works. But you see, if I'm not in the mood for pie, I won't eat it, because I know if I'm in the mood for it tomorrow, I will allow myself to. And that makes a big difference.
Well, it comes back to that food shame and thing you were talking about, like denying ourselves food. Do you have any sense of where that comes from? I mean, you were saying earlier that sometimes this masks an eating disorder, but from your point of view, why do we have these, like, I mean, obviously we have a lot of wonderful emotions around food, but we have this anxiety around certain foods. Or like
well, I think in a way quite rightly in some respects, because I think that we're the most, at this time, we are the most removed from the production of food than we've ever been. And in a way that creates a discordance, if you like. I mean, I had a wonderful doctor, nothing food related, but we've got quite friendly over the years. And she used to say that because now if you had to pick the oranges from a tree and then squeeze them and make the juice yourself and actually do all that, you wouldn't be having a pint of orange juice. But if you can get it in a carton, you can consume more than actually is natural. And I think so I think there's been a dislocation.
Yeah.
I think that for women particularly, it's about the feeling that you have to look a certain way. I think on the other hand, though, it is frightening about the amount of antibiotics that are in meat and also obviously that go into vegetables because manure is used in soil, and so I think people are worried about what they eat. But I think that there is a part of human beings that we're looking to do something, everyone's always tried to do something magical that will ensure immortality. And as I say, there isn't a diet or a way of eating out there that can ensure immortality or immunity from loss. So I think you have to understand the limits of what you can do. However, it is important, I think, to be responsible about what you eat and where it comes from, if you are privileged enough to be able to afford so to do. And I think that not everyone can. But I certainly think that, yes, it's reasonable to be concerned about our food intake. Are they saying you are boring?
I want to come back to the simplicity, and you have you mentioned your mother and your grandmother in the book a couple of times. There's a great scene where your mother, to your love of vegetables, like she would sit and eat a whole head of cabbage with just butter and some white pepper, which sounds delicious. Is that where your love for cooking or interest in food came from? From your mother, your grandmother? Was it how did that develop in you?
Well, I think when I was a child, I absolutely hated meal times. It was a great pain for me, and I mean pain in the sense of huge anxiety, not pain as in boredom, or it's irritating. And partly just because I was brought up as it is, it's obviously a long time ago in the last century, but it could have been 100 years before, in the sense that it was very Dickensian. You had to finish everything that was in front of me, and if not, the plate was brought back, and I had to eat it cold the next meal. And that was difficult, and I was quite a shy child, and I found the whole mealtime thing difficult and pressure. But I cooked from a very young age. My mother believed in child labour, so I didn't. And that was good, so I learned how to cook. I think then, in another Dickensian move, I was sent to boarding school, and it made me really miss home food, and then I rather began to appreciate food. Yeah. So my love of cooking, and then when I was at university, I cooked. I think I don't know when I stopped, when I stopped being a difficult eater and became an omnivore, but I did. And I think I often say to people about their kids, just, you know, set a good example, eat everything, cook with them, and actually things tend to sort themselves out.
Yeah. You know, I mean, the pleasure of your books is your writing. I mean, it's the recipes and your approach, but it's also the way you write about food, like that you can conjure your mother in that little scene, or you're very funny. There's a recipe for deviled roe, which I didn't know what that was, and then you prepare your reader for that it's the sperm of the herring.
Yeah.
And if you don't like that, tough on you, or if that makes you crazy, you're missing out. When did you start writing? What was the...
When I left university, which I wrote quite a lot there, I went into publishing, and then I was a journalist, and I was very young. When I was 26, I was the deputy literary editor of the London Sunday Times, and I then realised I was being paid to worry, not to think. So I traded in my staff contract, and I became a arts and book reviewer. So I did that for many years, and I became an op-ed columnist. So my background was not in food at all, except that I cooked a lot and ate. But, and I felt it was quite important to represent the non-professional. But I don't know, it was an accident. I didn't mean to write about food.
You didn't mean to?
No, I didn't mean to. I never set out to be a food writer.
Yeah.
But I enjoy, when I did it, I fought it a bit, because if you've been a book reviewer and you've worked, you know, on the books pages of newspapers, I felt when I wrote my first book, I kept saying, you know, no, it's only a food book. I was ashamed, you know, because I'd always had literary aspirations, which I'm glad to say I no longer have. But I felt I found my voice, and for any form of writing, that's a gift and not to be turned away from. I feel by writing about food, I write about life in my own way. I'm not saying I make grand philosophical pronouncements, but it seems to be what I want to do.
It's the mode of cooking, or attachment to food, or relationship to food is a mode of living.
It is, but also what interests me when I began my first book was fairly late on in my career, in the sense that I was 38 when my first book was published, and so that had been, you know, 15 years of being a non-food journalist. What interested me was trying to use language which is in itself abstract to conjure up a world which is the world of sensation, taste and texture, smell. It's quite hard sometimes, I feel, oh dear, I've been a bit too florid, but I think as much as possible that is what interested me.
Well, I want to invite the audience to ask questions as well. So we'll bring up the lights, and a couple of people will come around with microphones, so put your hand in the air. Please stand when you ask your question, and try and keep it short so we can get to a lot of people.
I'll try and keep my answers short too, because you know, I do witter wrong.
Hello.
Hi.
So I remember watching an interview with you on the Today Show when I was about 12 years old, and you described the tomato as being slut red, and it stuck with you.
Raspberries.
Raspberries?
Raspberries. I have a recipe for slut red raspberries.
I love it. Okay. Sorry. you already
In
have
my
that on me.
defense, it was an Australian term.
No, I still love that description. I have no problem with it. I'm wondering now, which authors do you find inspiration from when you're looking for language, or who inspires you as a writer?
Who inspires me as a writer? Well, I'm as a compulsive a reader as I am a cook. I have a curious form of synesthesia in which when I read, I mean, I'm talking about novels, for example, I experience the sentences in, like, taste. I feel like I love the taste. I remember saying to Martin Amis once, I love the taste of your sentences. And at first he looked a bit baffled, and then he realised that's something important. I love Dickens on food because he's so plain. He just has to say meat pie and you want to eat it. You don't need a description. But I'm not. I think it's so important when you cook or when you write, you have your own voice. So that while I love reading other food writers, and I read novels a great deal, mostly novels. That's what I read mostly. I would be horrified if I felt that if I felt I aped their prose. However, as a child, I read a great deal, and I feel that went to school. I went to elementary school in hippie time, and you didn't have to learn anything. But luckily, I read a lot, and that gave me an understanding of language and of grammar and the rhythms of a sentence. And I think so. Perhaps the greatest influence was when I was a child.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is also about inspiration, and I was just curious where you get your food inspiration for your recipes and ideas.
Where do I get my food inspiration? Well, there's a thing that they say about writers, which is the difference between a writer and someone who isn't a writer, is a writer doesn't wait for inspiration before he or she writes. And in a way, because I cook on a daily basis, I write in the introduction here that cooking has to be hinged to necessity. So in a way, I don't wait for inspiration to cook. And that, in a way, is hugely liberating, because I don't have to think of great ideas. I open my fridge and have to think, what am I going to cook for supper? So I get my input in terms of that. So inspiration comes predominantly from ingredients for me. I do, however, adore reading cookbooks. I have the world's most ridiculous collection. And I will often read and get inspiration in a strange way. I might read a recipe for, swordfish and rosemary, and I suddenly think, oh yeah, rosemary, I haven't got that, but I'm going to do some chicken. It's completely different. So I get inspired, but I'm not trying to do someone else's recipe. Although when I do, I always credit, because that's, I like to do that. I think the evolution of a recipe is interesting, but I also think it's very important to say, I don't want to be stealing people's ideas. And one of my nightmares is that a recipe that's gone into my consciousness and I don't know that. I think it's my idea, and someone's going to say that's mine. But obviously, there's no such thing. I mean, every good idea has already been done. So it's about not striving for novelty too. But I get my inspiration I know it sounds a bit like greed. I mean, simple greed and appetite, really.
I have to say, you have a wonderful Instagram. I follow you on Instagram, and you do a lot of follow of the day and share people you come across. I'm not saying they inspire you necessarily.
No, but they do inspire me, and also I love that community. So, for example, my follow of the day today is a food blogger from Belarus, and I just think it's so interesting, and I like that. And I also feel that if I get a recipe idea from someone, even if it becomes something quite different, I want to say, I love this. I like this. I love this website, or I love this blog, or this is a book that's inspired me. I think it's so important to share one's enthusiasms, and that's in the nature of cooking and in food. And I really find, like, so many of my recipes I find in other people's books, and it used to irritate me, and now I just think, well, that's a strange sort of ownership. I used to say to my kids when they were little, like I would often buy particular ingredients that they'd like, cheeses, but I'd always say, or they'd say, can I have some of, I say, no one owns food. It's here to be shared. It's very important. And no one owns a recipe. I always would credit someone who gave me the idea, and I think that's incredibly important. But it's a community, and I find it interesting, that the new technology allows us to be a bit like old-fashioned recipe circles. I also find it interesting that, however successful a food blogger with millions of people on his or her blog, still want to write a book. Still, the book is still important. There's a very intimate relationship between a reader and a writer, wherever it is. But I think with a food book particularly, there is something about holding it in your hand, seeing pictures. every element of the creation of the book is important to me. I'm there, doing the food, messing up the place settings. I don't like things looking too organised. The type is important to me, the quality of the paper, everything. I mean, I look at Pantone charts to choose the boards of the book and the end papers.
It's a beautiful book. I love the pink.
For me, I don't hide it all off to someone else. That would make me unhappy.
We have another question right here.
Thank you so much for being here, Nigella, at our wonderful Chicago Humanities Festival. My husband and I just adore you. You're our absolute favorite, and our favorite part of your show is when you come down at the end and you sneak back into the fridge, like in your nightgown, and it's just, it's what we do, and it's when you've made something really wonderful. It really sort of resonates with us. But my question for you is, what did you eat last night? Where were you, and what did you think of it?
Okay, I will tell you it all, and I will miss nothing else. I was at the tavern restaurant in the Soho House, and I had cancelled a reservation because I thought, because I've been really a bit sleep deprived, and I thought, no, it's more important. If I've got a chance to lie down, I'm going to lie down. But then I just thought, oh, well, maybe, it's not going to have to be anyway. I'll do it. It looks so gorgeous. I had a vodka martini, straight out with a twist. And then I had a kale salad, because I kind of get a craving for vegetables. And then they brought me out to taste a bit of a beet and goat cheese salad. I had some bread, really good divine bread. I then had a ribeye steak with some cream spinach and a chicory salad. And then I did something I'm so ashamed of, but I did it anyway. So the table next door to me had ordered the roast chicken for two, whatever it is, and it was all being carved, and I love the cartilage in the chicken, and when they were finished, I thought there was so much I could eat on there, and I went like this, I got up, and I did like that. I went, and I took the bit of cartilage, and then I saw that the oysters were still there, and I was picking the restaurant, and I was picking, and he said, like, you didn't have enough meat. I had a ribeye steak. And then I had a very small, teeny bit of hot chocolate, but I said to her, I'm not great at milk, so I didn't have a lot of that. And then I had a very teeny tiny selection of cheese, because I like cheese, but I didn't need it to be like a huge bit, like the French do, like small slices. And I'm trying to think if I've missed anything else. I don't think I have. Delicious. It's great. It's really great, and I have to say, it's made me very happy.
I think all of us as well. We were living vicariously.
But I did spend the whole time on this, really taking my order going, do I want the dough sole? Do I want the steak? I worried it was late at night if I ate that, but I sleep afterward. I went, he had to hear my every thought. And then I chased after him with the chicken on his car.
Yes. You
I can't see where.
Straight ahead.
You have a very robust presence on stage, and you mentioned in passing that you were a very shy child. And I'm interested to know if you had, or what epiphany you had that changed your personality.
I can still be shy, actually. What changed everything a lot for me was when I left what we call school, high school, is it? And I had a year off before I went to university. And I went to Italy. And I had to learn a different language, speak a different language, and I found I was much more open and less shy in Italian than I've been in English. I also think there's something quite good, you know, I love my family very dearly, but there is something very liberating about moving beyond, out of the family, because there is that thing known as the family script, and I was the shy, sensitive, impractical one, even though I was the only one who could change a plug, you know. But still, so it was, so I did find, I was more confident in, because I learned Italian. My mother used to say, which is something I so understand now, but you know, my mother used to say when I was about 15, I don't know why you're so shy, no one's interested in you anyway. And I used to, which really helps, you know. And, but the thing is, and I notice that because when I see young people who are shy, I do think, oh yes, it is a form of self-absorption, and as you get older, you know, and my mother also used to say to me, you know, that it's much more important to be charmed than to charm. She had many little lessons. And I think that's true that sometimes I do, if I'm going to do at a book signing, sometimes I do feel a bit shy, but I've realised that everyone else does, and if I concentrate on making other people feel at ease, I don't concentrate on my own awkwardness as much. But I think also as you get older, you just care less, you know. When you're young, everyone goes, this focus on youth is mad in the sense that it pretends that youth is easy. It's very hard being young. And I think that shyness is awkwardness and not knowing quite who you are. And when I really feel for it, if children come to my book signing, the parents go, you're shy, aren't you? And I remember how hideous it was when someone would say that to me in that way. And I think that it's hard to be young. And it's that if one's lucky enough to get older, life gets easier.
Good afternoon, I think, almost.
Is it?
Soon. When you speak about your journalism, your cooking, obviously there's definitely a brain, a consciousness with your hands and your heart, and the soulfulness that you speak about. Do you find that as you're doing your cooking and your writing, that it's almost like it takes you to a different level within yourself, within your creativity?
You know, writing is a strange thing, because writing is something that is both something one really wants to do or something one wants to avoid at all costs. It's you know, it's a pleasure pain thing, like pouring candle wax on your hand. So it doesn't quite, I don't feel it takes me to it. I think it makes one more intensely oneself rather than taking oneself to another place sounds higher, it's more in. And when I cook, I do feel, for me, as someone who's got slightly a butterfly brain, often, I feel that it's kind of meditative in a way that I can't have elsewhere, although I do yoga. And I was trained in a kind of old-fashioned academic discipline, which means that it's easy to get analytical. And sometimes that while interesting, it doesn't make one reflective in a way that's helpful. So sometimes having fewer thoughts and just concentrating on stirring or chopping or cooking, and when you write, it's just about the word. And the argument you think about comes out of that. So sometimes I think fewer thoughts make one think more deeply.
What was the discipline you were educated in?
Well, it was literary. I did a degree in medieval and modern languages at Oxford.
Oh.
14th century Italian poetry.
Straight back in the center.
Hi. You've managed to be such a creative and powerful force in cooking. You've put out so many different cookbooks and content. How do you work with a team to produce something as epic as a cookbook and a TV show and still maintain your unique glamorous stuff?
I'm not a great delegator, is the reason. So I have, like some people have big, huge teams. I've got one person who works with me on the food front, not full time, but she came for a month. I did my first book, I did completely by myself, and she came for, she was doing a magazine and asked me to shoot when my first book came out, and I didn't realise she could get someone to help clear up and do some of the washing up and everything. That was really brilliant. And so I said, well, I'm going to start a new book, and can you work for me in January? I met her in October 98, and so it was January 99, and she stayed with me ever since. And she has kids now, and so she doesn't work every day, but we work very well together because she gets across to me sometimes. She says, so I said, do you think that's too much cinnamon in this? And she says, no. And I say, I think so, or something. And she says, why do you ask if you always do what you think? And I say, because that's how I work out what I think. So I have that, but I do, and sometimes I'm cooking and I'm telling her what I'm doing and she takes notes because it's quite hard to be creative if you're writing, if you plan ahead, so I just do and she watches. And then when I do the books, I've had the same designer forever. And I've changed photographers a bit because I think it's good to have, not to get into a pattern. But so I don't have a huge team. When we're doing the books, so there'll be the photographer, the art director, I've always worked with, a designer, and Hetty, who helps me in the kitchen. And sometimes I get someone else in if we need to get too many shots a day, but they're my recipes, so we're all cooking, or someone's looking at the monitor and checking all down the barrel of the lens. And then for the TV series, I only have one camera, and that's why we film it. It takes a long time. One camera,
and this is what you're doing right now. You're doing a series.
I
with
finished.
the BBC.
It's not started going out in the UK.
Yeah.
But because of that, I don't do high volume. Because like some people say to me, something like, "Your TV shows, how many do you do a day?" And I say, "We do six 13-hour days to make one program." Because every bit is relit. It's like a film. So. I enjoy doing that, I'm same crew, really. I've got different cameramen this time. Same crew forever, but get a very small crew. And I'm not scripted. I refuse, that's the deal I do, I won't be scripted. And...
So are you one take, Nigella?
No. You can't do one take, everything has to be done 5 times when you're doing it for one camera. Anyway, you see the different angles. And also you can improve things. But what I mean to say is so what I'm saying, we take it from a wide shot, we do a wide shot, then something that we call, very technically, uppy-downy, which is when the camera follows, so you get movement.
Right.
And then we call something we erroneously call the mime, which is very close up. It's not very many people do this. Very, very close up on my head, so that I could do the words, but I'm miming, I'm not doing the action, so you get a clean shot, and it helps in the editing, so you've got something you can cut to. But when I'm doing the wide shot, I'm cooking it all for real, and it's that, essentially I'm giving a running commentary on what's happening in front of me, because the director and the camera can't see what I'm doing because it's so wide, so I'm actually just, whatever comes to mind, I say when I'm doing it.
And then they could do the cut-ins and you have
and
the
then
voiceover.
later we do 2 of the food. We do over the top. There's 2 ones, they're known as pans and hands in the business. Over the top, and one that we call sideshow Bob, which is so things go, when you film with the same people very together, so things go, you see things go at an angle, the food looks really beautiful in my programs because they're artists, and they do it, and it's lit, and you see the food, and it isn't just about like having a still camera with everything going like that. It's so you might change the angle when you're putting in a teaspoon of sugar, then you change a teaspoon of coffee or something. It will change so it looks beautiful, and the lighting will be to put lots of candles behind. We go on for hours wrangling the tea lights and things.
If we have time for just one more question.
All right.
Back here.
Welcome to Chicago.
Thank you very much.
As more high-profile
professional chefs and profile home cooks are lending their name and support to food policy issues and the world of food. And if you were to be involved in any policy, if you could affect policy in any way, or if there are food issues that you're passionate about, could you share those with us?
Well, I will, but that's, the difficulty for me is that I feel I am so flawed in so many ways that I just can't, I feel like I can't preach something that people should do. I can talk about how to encourage, but I'm not that person. And maybe because my father was a politician, I absolutely, it's an area I do not want to be involved in. However, one of the things that does inspire me an awful lot, and I look forward to working more, is that strangely enough, especially with my first book, How to Eat, a lot of that's used an awful lot in eating disorder clinics to try and help people with difficult relationships with food, make friends with food, and see it as something that can be positive in life. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's an area I would really like to work in at some stage. But privately, you see, I have no desire to be doing photo opportunities in eating disorder clinics. And that is also the trouble, that I don't really want anything I do, and there are certain things I've done outside that I don't necessarily, I feel I want to do things because I think it's right. I don't necessarily want to be doing it in a high profile way, and I know perhaps that's irresponsible of me, but that's how I feel at the moment.
Before we let you go, there's a moment in the book where this is a lot about being contemplative and having that kind of feeling friendly about food, feeling friendly about yourself in relation to food. But you also talk about the mindful kitchen, that you could write a whole book about that, mindful cooking.
I don't know if I could write a whole book about it. It'd be a very slim volume, but that's not necessarily.
It's just a little chapbook, But do you have any? Yeah. What things would you say about that? Maybe to leave with us.
Oh, I think it's just about that trying to focus on small things, and it really is about not planning, being in the moment, and I suppose I'd leave it with the fact that I say, and I've said this since the beginning, that while the point of cooking lies in the result, the meaning lies in the process, and I think it's about really inhabiting that process rather than just focusing on the result. Look, if the worst thing that happens in your life is that dinner doesn't taste great, what a blessed existence.
Nigella Lawson, thank you so much.